If there is an afterlife, please stay away from me. Let Ellie and I become a real couple. Jonathan, who had been married to me for 20 years, begged me before he died. I nodded with tears in my eyes. Okay. When I looked up again, I was staring at the young Jonathan not far away. He was standing at the door of the dormitory, waiting for me to get the marriage certificate together. I suddenly took a few steps back. This time, I will fulfill your wish. When I realized that I was reborn, I was holding a marriage registration application in my hand, and Jonathan was standing at the door of the dormitory waiting for me. He lowered his head, not knowing what he was thinking, kicking a small stone from time to time. I took back my steps and asked my colleague to tell him that I had something urgent to do, so he should go first. In the previous life, Jonathan's sigh when he died is still ringing in my ears. I couldn't give Ellie a real home in this life. After all, I can't let it go. If there is an afterlife, please stay away from me. Let me and her. At this moment, watching him turn and leave, I pinched my palms tightly, and it took me a while to stabilize my fluctuating thoughts. I rode my bike to the geological research room on the mountain. The teacher handed me a roasted corn and looked at me in surprise. Didn't you get the marriage certificate with Jonathan today? Why are you back again? I didn't want to make her worry, so I smiled. It seemed that today was not a good day. To get married, we still have to choose an auspicious day. The teacher tapped my forehead lightly and said with a smile, "You are so young, and you still believe in these things? After you and Jonathan get married, there will be many good days." I was stunned for a moment and hugged the teacher's arm coquettishly. "You are right. I will go and marry Jonathan later." Bah, not in this life. In the last life, on the day when Jonathan and I got the marriage certificate, he took me to take a shortcut back to the village. On the way, he rescued a girl from the ditch. The girl was Ellie, who ran away from home, my half-sister. This rescue made Jonathan fall in love with her at first sight. He was upset at home every day why he didn't get the certificate with me one day later. After marriage, he became more and more cold to me. On the day he learned that I was pregnant, he disappeared. No one knew where he went or whether he was dead or alive. After years of silence, I thought he had died in an accident. I raised my son with great difficulty and took care of his sick mother alone. It was not until 20 years later, at his mother's funeral, that I learned he had been living in seclusion in another place with Ellie. They had a daughter. Over the years, he had given all his love to Ellie and her daughter. What I didn't expect was that when I was hysterically asking for an explanation, my son stood in front of Jonathan and blamed me harshly. Grandma said that if you had half the gentleness of Aunt May, you wouldn't have been unable to keep my dad and let me grow up without fatherly love. It turned out that when I didn't know, my son and mother-in-law had already contacted Jonathan. I was the only one who was kept in the dark and was willing to work like a cow to support the Jonathan family. On the day of my mother-in-law's funeral, the road was slippery after the rain. I was in a trance and was pushed off the cliff by a hand. For some reason, Jonathan fell with me. When he was dying, he said he was sorry and hated me, but what right did he have to hate me? I dawdled in the laboratory for 2 hours before I took a shortcut and went straight to the marriage registration office. When passing a stone bridge, I happened to see Jonathan jumping into the ditch. Someone had fallen into the water. The villagers quickly gathered around. "Oh, this girl can't swim. She is really lucky, isn't she?" Fortunately, Mr. Jonathan had been sitting by the bridge and was able to go into the river to save her in time. It was as if it was arranged by God. The villagers were talking excitedly. I stood behind a crowd and saw Jonathan standing in the river water up to his chest, hugging Ellie tightly. The look he gave Ellie changed again and again, from surprise to worry, to fear, and finally to uncontrollable joy. In the previous life, he and I pulled Ellie ashore. I was only concerned with asking her if she had choked on the water and didn't notice Jonathan's expression at all. Now, from the perspective of a passerby, everything is so obvious. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but frown. At the beginning, it was Jonathan who said that he didn't want to be too ostentatious after getting the certificate, so he decided to take me on his bike along the path. I even laughed at him for being shy as a groom. But in this life, I didn't go to get the certificate with him. Yet he still took this path and sat on the bridge on purpose. Before I could think about it, Jonathan came ashore holding Ellie. The crowd dispersed. When he saw me standing in front of him, his whole body froze and he quickly became flustered. Jessica, you're here, me, her? I noticed that there was a hint of complexity in the way he looked at me. He seemed a little helpless, but in fact, he was still holding Ellie and didn't let go. He had no awareness of avoiding suspicion with other women as a fiancé. I was very curious. Before getting the marriage certificate in this life, he met Ellie. In front of so many villagers, what choice would he make? Would he find an excuse to break up with me and choose Ellie, or continue to marry me like in the previous life, but live together with Ellie? I pretended to be anxious and pulled Jonathan to check him carefully, shouting if he was feeling unwell. His clothes were all wet. Ellie huddled in Jonathan's arms, trembling and calling me sister. I just looked at Jonathan. It's getting late. Why don't we let the nearby villagers take her to change into dry clothes, and then we can hurry to get the certificate? Jonathan's face turned pale. Achoo. Ellie's timely sneeze broke the silence for a moment. Jonathan immediately said, Jessica, why don't we do it another day? My eyes moved between him and Ellie, and then I said lightly, that's fine. We need to choose a good day to get the certificate. He quickly took over the conversation and quickly agreed. Yes, 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 we must choose a good day. There was happiness in his voice, and I also smiled at the corners of my lips. There will never be a good day in this life for me to get a marriage certificate with him. Ellie is not my biological sister. She is the child brought by my stepmother when she married my father, and we two sisters do not have a good relationship. I haven't been home since my father died, and I wonder why she fell into the water here. I was thinking about asking her after she changed her clothes, but Jonathan naturally pulled her to sit on the back seat of his bicycle. When they were about to go back to the village, he looked at me and explained belatedly, I'm worried that you will be too tired to ride with someone. I nodded, got on the bicycle, and walked in front. The wind beside my ears brought the whispers of Jonathan and Ellie. There was also Jonathan's hearty laughter. I couldn't help but turn my head to look at Jonathan's smiling face. I couldn't remember how long it had been since I last saw him smile. After all, after meeting Ellie in the previous life, he no longer smiled when facing me. At this point, I understood in my heart, I guess Jonathan had also been reborn. The drama of a hero saving a beauty was spread back to the village by the villagers while we were delayed for a while. What's more, the hero Jonathan had a special identity. He was a college student who came to the village to do geological research. When we returned to the village entrance, the villagers and some colleagues from the research institute were already greeting us. They saw Ellie sitting in the back seat of Jonathan, leaning sideways and tightly against his back. The colleagues were surprised and stunned. It was Xiaoli, who lived in the same dormitory with me, who spoke quickly. Jonathan, didn't you go to get the marriage certificate? Why did you bring back a woman? Isn't it that saving a life and promising yourself to her is how it goes in the script? A few words made the villagers laugh, and they all started joking. Jonathan frowned, then his eyes lit up, and just as he was about to speak, Ellie had already let go of his hand and jumped off the car seat. She lowered her head, twisted the corner of her clothes, and said with red eyes aggrievedly, I am Jessica's sister. Don't talk nonsense. Although brother Jonathan and I had that hug in the river, I won't hold him responsible for me. Please don't do this. I'm leaving now. Don't laugh at brother Jonathan. Just let me drown in the river. As she spoke, tears flowed down her face, and she cried in my direction aggrievedly. Sister, I'm leaving. Then she turned and was about to leave. Jonathan's face was a little embarrassed. He reached out and held Ellie and walked in front of me. A gust of cold wind blew, and he shuddered, lowered his voice, and said to me, I've been waiting by the bridge for more than an hour, but you didn't come. Maybe this is the chance God has given me to choose again. Don't blame me. After that, he didn't wait for me to speak, turned around, and said to the crowd with a tragic face, although it was an act of saving lives, it was in public after all. Having physical contact with a female comrade, even if women hold up half the sky, I also know that the root of the tongue can kill people. I, Jonathan, am not someone who cannot take responsibility. I will be responsible for Comrade Ellie. Jessica, fate is playing tricks on you. Just consider it that I am sorry for you. Let's call off our marriage." Every word he said was sonorous and full of righteousness. When he spoke to me at the end, he was full of regret. For a moment, everyone's faces were strange, and they looked at each other. Being responsible? It's not ancient times. Why do you really have to be responsible? It was just a joke at first, but I didn't expect that the matter would get so big. My colleagues looked at me one after another, either winking at me or shaking their heads to indicate their objection. I knew what they meant, but I still walked forward a few steps with a smile. He is worthy of being the fiancé chosen by me, Jessica. He is responsible. Ellie is my stepsister, but Jonathan thought I disagreed, and he couldn't help but reach out to pull my sleeve. I lowered my eyes and looked at his frozen purple hands and continued, "Although Ellie is my stepsister, she is also a member of the Jessica family. I support Jonathan's decision. The marriage contract between the Jonathan and Jessica families will be changed to Jonathan and Ellie. Please be a witness, fellow villagers and colleagues. I, Jessica, am not unwilling to get married, but it's not that I have changed my mind and abandoned him." Having said that, I pushed my bicycle back to the dormitory without hesitation. As soon as I arrived at the dormitory, I took out a file bag from the desk. It contained my research paper. In fact, I was only seconded to the current project research room. After completing the paper, I would be transferred back to Chongqing. In my previous life, because I wanted to marry Jonathan, I gave up returning to the city and followed him to do research on the front line. But less than half a year after the marriage, we separated and went to different project teams. Later, I found out that I was pregnant and Jonathan disappeared. I was alone with my son. After work, I asked around for Jonathan's whereabouts. I was unable to cope with my career and was gradually transferred to an ordinary position at the grassroots level. I had been mediocre all my life. Even my son looked down on me for being dirty all day long. He said that other people's mothers are capable and beautiful. "Aunt May, no woman is as undressed as you. Aunt May Ellie." Recalling this, I was filled with shock. It turned out that as early as that time, my son had already reunited with his missing father in private. It's ridiculous that they kept it a secret for 20 years. I clutched the file bag tightly and resolutely walked towards the teacher's residence. The teacher lives in the south of the village. On the way, you need to pass the family quarters of the institute. One of the newly painted houses has white walls, green tiles, curtains with small floral patterns, and bright red window grills with the character "C." It is particularly eye-catching. It is the new house that I had decorated carefully in the past half-month. I once thought that marrying Jonathan, my classmate for 3 years, would be my best destination. In the past 3 years, he had boiled water for me, saved seats for me, and copied notes for me. He was very considerate. After we confirmed our relationship, he had been even more disciplined and had never done anything beyond the rules with me. People around him said that if I didn't marry such a good person, I would lose a lot. I also think that it doesn't matter if he comes from the countryside. I have a city hukou, and he can move with me after marriage. It doesn't matter if he comes from a poor family. If we work hard together, we can still live a fulfilling life. At this time, a woman's artificial praise came from the house. "Wow, Brother Jonathan, I didn't expect you to be able to cook. It smells so good." The kitchen door was half open, and I could vaguely see Jonathan busy in front of the stove. Sure enough, doing things like washing hands and cooking soup is always for the one you love. In the past, he said that we had meal tickets, so we shouldn't waste them. We ate in the cafeteria every day. On my birthday, I acted like a spoiled child and said I wanted to eat the dumplings he made, but he said it was too much trouble and took me to a noodle shop for a bowl of vegetable noodles. It turned out that it wasn't that he couldn't cook. I had just never been the one he wanted to cook for. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I bent down to pick up a stone, raised my hand, and was about to throw it at the window. The next second, my wrist was suddenly clamped tightly by a big hand. I screamed in fright. Jonathan and Ellie looked over at me and asked, "Sister, Do you want to come and have dinner with us and try Brother Jonathan's cooking? Ellie waved at me. Jonathan walked out of the room, frowned slightly, and started to ask, Jessica, although you sisters have a bad relationship, Ellie fell into the water and was frightened, but you left her at the entrance of the village and didn't care. What does that look like? It's not just a bad relationship. Jonathan knew very well that my father was angered to death by Ellie and her daughter, and he also knew that I had cut off contact with them a long time ago. I sneered. Don't you have your own responsibility for her? Jonathan thought I was jealous, and the expression on his face relaxed a little. Just as I was about to explain, Ellie suddenly asked loudly, Sister, who is this man? You were holding hands just now. I turned around and looked over. It was Victor. In the previous life, everyone thought that Jonathan was dead. Victor ran to me to express his feelings and wanted to take care of me and my son. At that time, my mother-in-law took my son and went around crying to people several times, so I gave up the idea of getting married again. I heard that Victor has never been married since then. You didn't deliberately find a street urchin as a partner to get revenge on me, did you? Jonathan also saw Victor. He looked incredulous. It seemed that in his heart, I could never let him go. Well, I have broken up with you. Who I am with is none of your business. I pulled up Victor's sleeve and walked forward. Stop, where are you going? Jonathan's face changed, and he blurted out. I raised the file bag in my hand. Of course, I'm going to change the name on the marriage registration application. Is that not allowed? How can you be with him? Jonathan stared at me in disbelief. His eyes were full of hurt. It was really funny. He still wanted to pretend to be affectionate, but it was unnecessary. Besides, Ellie wouldn't agree. It's so hot. As expected, when he heard Ellie scream, Jonathan turned around and ran to the kitchen. Victor grinned at me, then raised his eyebrows and whistled very cooperatively. The lazy street urchin really does look a bit like Jonathan. In his previous life, he lived in seclusion in a mountain village somewhere else with Ellie. He didn't know the street urchin Victor he mentioned at all. But Victor would become the son of the richest family in Chongqing in the future. Victor sent me all the way to the teacher's residence. He stopped and looked at the file bag in my hand, hesitant to speak. After a while, he whispered, I should go back to the city these 2 days. Are you serious about what you said just now? I looked up at him, smiling. Oh, are you willing to take it seriously? He was stunned for a moment, touched the back of his head with his hand, and said eagerly, Yes, I am willing. Looking at his flushed face, I couldn't help but smile. Although Victor was not married in his previous life and was always very good to me, I can't be sure. But now he already likes me. I used to be obsessed with Jonathan for a scumbag I never planned for myself and ruined my life in vain. In this life, I still have the opportunity to choose my own life, don't I? I handed the thesis to the teacher and told her that I agreed to be transferred back to the upper city. The teacher already knew what had happened at the village entrance. She went to find Jonathan for me. She said, I didn't expect that we were both wrong. It turns out that love can be pretended. Did Jonathan love me? Maybe he did. During the time we spent together on campus, I could see that he was happy. But later, even first love couldn't resist the gift from heaven. The teacher looked at me with pity in her eyes. If this is the result of your careful consideration, I support you. With your ability, you can have better development. I discussed with the teacher and completed the handover. The transfer letter will arrive in about a week. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. In the next period of time, I still have one thing to do. In the previous life, after marriage, I realized that Jonathan and I were in love only because of my urban hookup. After graduation, he had no connections or backing. As a technical worker, it was difficult for him to be promoted. But with an urban hookup, after working on the front line for 5 years, he had the opportunity to be transferred back to the city to work in an office. It was the appearance of Ellie that made him find the feeling of true love. He didn't know where the love came from, but he was deeply in love with her. But he should never, ever, selfishly give up everything for love. It tortured my life. The next day, I rode my bike to the post office in the town and called the leader of my dad's unit. My dad was a middle school teacher. He had worked diligently all his life to teach and educate people. But my stepmother disliked my dad's low salary and hooked up with an old widower from the supply and marketing cooperative. Unexpectedly, the man fell in love with Ellie and wanted to marry her. The mother and daughter quarreled at home because of this. The family compound was so small that this scandal became known to everyone. My dad was so angry that he had a stroke and became paralyzed. My stepmother decided to go all out and left my dad, running away from home. Ellie led a few gangsters to demand my dad's passbook and turned the house upside down. I argued with her, but the gangsters grabbed my hair, pushed me to the ground, and slapped me hard several times. My father looked at me with blood in his mouth, and he was so anxious and angry that he fell off the bed. His condition worsened, and he died. In my previous life, I blamed my father for remarrying and refused to agree to transfer the household registration of Ellie and her daughter. As a result, our father-daughter relationship became very strained. The unit house didn't have a real estate certificate. We only needed to handle a contract change at the unit. After my father died in my previous life, Ellie took advantage of the situation, forged my signature, and occupied the house. Soon, the house was demolished, and she took away a large sum of compensation money. This time, I must take back what belongs to me. I asked the principal to help me obtain the real estate certificate to facilitate the transfer procedures. I want to see how long her romance with Jonathan can last without the demolition fee. I went to the station and bought a ticket back. When I returned to the dormitory and opened the door, I found Jonathan sitting in front of my desk, flipping through my work notes. When he saw me, he quickly stood up and poured me some water. I took the cup and looked at him in surprise. My transfer letter hasn't arrived yet, and I don't want anything unexpected to happen before I leave. He hesitated for a long time and said, "Jessica, Ellie and I are not what you think. Listen to me. I had a dream that felt so real." I drank the water slowly, waiting for him to continue. He said that in the dream, he fell in love with Ellie at first sight. It was true love, not comparable to the relationship between him and me. He said he could feel his heartbeat. On the contrary, I was more like the third party in their relationship, like a thorn in the flesh between him and Ellie. When Jonathan said this, his eyes were moist. "Ellie doesn't have a stable job like you," he continued. "She fell into the water because she heard a rumor that gold sand could be found in the riverbed in the village. It's not easy for a girl like her to live. I just wanted to take care of her more. They say that marriage is predestined. Jessica, do you believe that?" I knew the dream he mentioned was actually from his previous life. There's no such thing as predestined fate. He made it sound like it would go against the will of heaven if he didn't stay with Ellie in this life. He just wanted a lifelong relationship with her and to use my resources to climb higher. He was fooling me with talk of destiny. I looked at him steadily. I only believe that everything is fated in the dark. In this life, I won't be his mother's nanny, won't take care of the Jonathan family, and won't cover for him and Ellie so they can live a happy life like they did before. The bus back to the city was in the evening. Since it was still early, I found a restaurant to eat first. At that time, there weren't many people eating, and I immediately saw Ellie and Jonathan sitting at the innermost table. I was about to sit down at an empty seat by the door when Ellie stood up and waved enthusiastically. "Sister, are you here to eat too? Brother Jonathan said the food here is delicious. Come sit with us, don't be polite. We won't be able to finish all this food anyway." She spoke in the tone of a hostess, worthy of being a vixen who had seduced someone else's husband for 20 years. When I didn't move, she came over and pulled me to their table saying, "Sister, don't get me wrong. Brother Jonathan just saw I was frightened that day, so he wanted to take me out to relax and eat something good." I looked at the table full of fish and meat. Wow, it really did look good. I was afraid it cost Jonathan more than half a month's salary. He was really generous to Ellie. Jonathan looked a little embarrassed when he saw me. Brother Jonathan insisted on ordering the braised pork elbow, the signature dish here. "You should try it," Ellie said. He also said he'd pack a portion for me to take back. And this steamed fish, I've never eaten anything so fresh and tender. She picked up a piece of meat for me and kept bragging. Brother Jonathan read my palm and said I'll be rich in the future and will get a lot of money soon. I replied with a smile, I've known your brother Jonathan for so many years, but I never knew he could read palms. When did he become a half-immortal who can predict the future? Jonathan's face turned red and blue. He was about to speak to change the subject when Ellie chimed in again. I heard you eat in the cafeteria every day, and there's no oil or water there. In the future, when we go to a restaurant, I'll pick out some leftovers and bring them back for you. I rubbed my forehead, stunned for a moment. Then a sneer came from nearby. Let's talk about that when you can afford to eat in restaurants. Victor had entered the restaurant without me noticing. Several of his brothers followed him in, sat down, and knocked on the plates. I thought it was some kind of gourmet feast. TSK, it's just food even street urchins wouldn't want. Ellie had never seen such a scene before. She was so scared that she hid in Jonathan's arms. Jonathan reached out to protect her, as if he wanted to stand up to them, but didn't dare. His face turned red from holding it in. Looking at Jonathan, I suddenly felt like he was a stranger. A wave of sadness rose in my heart, sadness that I had wasted my entire life on such a cowardly man. The next afternoon, the principal looked surprised to see me. Aren't you busy with work recently? I thought you entrusted your sister to handle the property transfer. He pointed to another office and said, Ellie just came to get the property certificate and is waiting at the signing office now. No wonder I met Ellie and Jonathan at the hotel near the station yesterday. It turned out they had already set their sights on the property. I curled my lips and slowly walked over. Through the window, I saw Ellie holding the thin certificate, looking at it over and over, her face full of irrepressible pride. Brother Jonathan, you really have a way. This will be our wedding house in the future. I'm so happy. Yes, Ellie, the household registration issue can also be resolved. Wait until I am transferred back to the city to work. I'll buy you a big house, and we'll have a son. We'll be a family of 3, with our heads close together, talking intimately. What if it's discovered that the signature is fake and Jessica wants the house back? Ellie was still a little uneasy. Jonathan stroked the top of her head and said lovingly, Silly girl, there's a transfer certificate in black and white. So, what are you afraid of? Besides, I've been with Jessica for a few years, and I can imitate her signature well enough to make it look real.
Don't worry.
Well, Ellie saw that there was no one in the room, so she quickly kissed him on the face. Just like that, Jonathan was moved. He took a deep breath and suppressed the lust in his eyes. In my previous life, after I got the certificate and went back, I looked at the big red wedding character posted at home and was full of joy. On the wedding night, lying on the wedding bed that I had carefully decorated, he turned off the fire. That night, like countless lonely nights later, we slept on our own and did nothing. Until one day when he came back from a business trip to another province, he suddenly hugged me and apologized to me, but he never explained the reason. During that time, he was particularly gentle, and I thought he finally figured it out. After learning that I was pregnant, he walked with me, gave me massages, and prepared baby supplies together. He did what a caring and good husband should do, but disappeared at dawn one day. The brief sweetness that Jonathan had given me in my memory gradually overlapped with the desire in his eyes. I suddenly came to my senses, rushed into the office, and snatched the property certificate from Ellie. I turned and left without saying a word. A moment later, Jonathan came to his senses and chased after me. He held me and said with certainty, Jessica, you are back too, right? See, I didn't deny it. He chuckled. I should have discovered it on the day we got the certificate, but you clearly promised to stay away from me. Why did you follow me here? Following him was ridiculous. I looked at him, my eyes full of mockery. In your previous life, you fell in love with Ellie at first sight and wanted to stay with her forever, but you were worried that your mother would have no one to take care of her. Therefore, you needed me, a virtuous wife, to take care of your mother in her old age and see her to the end of her life. Ellie failed to give birth to a son for you, and you were unwilling to give up, so you came back to coax my son away. Oh, my good son whom I raised with great effort, who called Ellie Mom when I didn't know.
How funny is that?
My heart ached, and I suddenly remembered the hands that pushed me off the cliff in my previous life. They were my son. He couldn't wait for me to give up his place to his Ellie mom. Fortunately, I would never be able to bring him into this world in this lifetime. I took a deep breath and continued. What do you think is worthy of my following a person like you who is full of calculations? I wish I could never see you again, so as not to pollute my eyes. Perhaps he didn't expect that my words would be sharper than the last. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he couldn't say a word. I shook the property certificate in my hand and asked word by word. In the past, when you received the demolition compensation and lived a carefree life, did you ever think that my life was difficult? Jonathan retorted, I give money to Mom every year, right? Your mom needed medical treatment, but you didn't give her the money, but forced me to work 3 jobs. Do you dare to say you don't know? That year, I was injured in a car accident on the road while working odd jobs and suffered heavy bleeding. His mother didn't pay a penny and even shouted, let her die. She is my nemesis. It was the teacher who paid for the doctor to save me that brought me back to life. Thinking of this, I just felt cold all over and trembling. Jonathan stepped forward and wanted to help me, but I pushed him away and leaned against the wall. I calmed down, and when I looked at Jonathan again, there was only indifference in his eyes. Since I was also reborn, there was no reason for me to suffer anymore. After completing the property transfer procedures, I didn't expect that Victor was waiting for me outside the school gate. He accompanied me back to the institute and packed up my luggage. He didn't show up in front of me for several days until the day the transfer notice was issued. He asked someone to pass on a message and asked me to go to the teacher's residence. He said mysteriously that he wanted to give me a surprise. I opened the door. The yard was decorated with lights and was surrounded by neighbors and colleagues. Victor stood under a sweet-scented osmanthus tree and smiled foolishly at me. I don't know who whistled, and several brothers pushed him to stand in front of me with a smile. His face flushed, and he handed a brocade box to my hand. I took it generously and opened it. There was a jade bracelet inside, with a warm texture and a beautiful appearance. Let's get married. As soon as Victor finished speaking, everyone in the yard started to make a noise. I looked at the teacher standing at the door of the hall. She nodded slightly at me. No matter in the previous life or this life, the teacher has always taken care of me like a daughter. The day before yesterday, Victor brought his parents to ask the teacher to marry me. It seems that the teacher is also very satisfied with this marriage in the Victor family. I retracted my gaze and was about to agree to Victor's proposal when a figure rushed into the yard door in a hurry and then shouted, Wait a minute, Jessica is my fiancé. The scene was silent for a while. It was Jonathan. He was sweating profusely and didn't even bother to wipe it off. He stood straight between Victor and me. He exuded a strong smell of alcohol. This scumbag must be lingering. I looked at him without a trace of fluctuation in my eyes. Jonathan, I made it very clear at the entrance of the village that day. Ellie is your fiancé. After that, I wanted to walk around him and walk towards Victor, but he grabbed me. Jessica, I was crazy at that time. Today, I finally understand my heart. In fact, the time I spend with you is the happiest. I know you love me. You deliberately colluded with Victor to act out this drama, to force me to see my own feelings, right? I caught a glimpse of Ellie chasing after Jonathan. She was pale and leaning against the doorframe, looking shaky. I curled the corners of my mouth and smiled. You don't deserve to love. From the beginning to the end, you only love yourself. It's just that when you see that Ellie can't get the property and your money and future are both slim, you want to turn around and coax me first. The onlookers whispered and pointed at Jonathan. Seeing that Jonathan did not refute, Ellie hurried over to question him. Brother Jonathan, is what she said true?
Say something.
You clearly said that I am the person you have loved for 2 lifetimes, and you will never let me go in this life. I am all yours. You will marry me, right? You said that we will have a son, our family of 3. At the end, Ellie cried breathlessly. The neighbors originally heard that Victor was proposing and came to join in the fun, but they didn't expect after hearing such a big gossip. They said, No wonder Jonathan didn't hide when they saw Ellie deliberately rubbing her body against Jonathan. Some people also said that they saw Ellie and Engineer Jonathan holding hands in the back mountain, and Engineer Jonathan fed Ellie a banana mouth-to-mouth. At this time, Jonathan looked like he was stripped naked and exposed to the public. He was a little embarrassed. He didn't understand that Ellie was deliberately revealing their private affairs in front of everyone so that he had to marry her. Jonathan let go of my hand helplessly and fled. That night, Victor put the jade bracelet on my wrist. In the presence of neighbors and colleagues, I agreed to his proposal. The next day, we left the mountain village and returned to the upper city. I devoted myself to my new job, while the Victor family was busy preparing for our wedding. My parents-in-law are very open-minded and kind people. They encouraged me to pursue my own career. Life after marriage is no longer like the previous life with a son and the burden of Jonathan's mother. I completed my work very well. Not long after, I was promoted and given a raise, and I could stand on my own. Victor also took advantage of the development of the market economy. Together with my parents-in-law, we made the family business bigger and bigger. 2 years later, it was natural for us to have our own child. When I came out of the prenatal checkup at the hospital, I saw Ellie from afar. Jonathan finally realized his wish in his previous life and became a real couple with Ellie. Soon after the marriage, Jonathan took her to another project team. But Jonathan's mother was not an easy person to deal with. She looked down on Ellie, who had no job. She called her back from Jonathan on the pretext that she was old and needed someone to take care of her. She used all her tricks to torture Ellie every day. She thought that Ellie was marrying up to her son, and she was sure that Ellie was shameless and seduced Jonathan before marriage, ruining the good thing between Jonathan and me. Ellie wanted Jonathan to take her away, but Jonathan's mother would never agree. Jonathan's mother wanted to keep Ellie by her side and serve her like a cow and a horse. The Jonathan family was in chaos all day long. As time went on, Jonathan could no longer see the gentleness and elegance of his previous life in Ellie. In the daily necessities, Ellie was no different from a street shrew. After Jonathan applied for an external transfer, he disappeared again. This was something I didn't expect. In his previous life, Jonathan regretted not giving Ellie a home for the rest of his life. It seems that he is not very affectionate in this life. Unable to find Jonathan, Ellie ran to the unit in a rage to ask for him. She brought a few hooligans to the unit gate and made a scene. In the dispute with a security guard, she slipped and rolled down the stairs, and her stomach hit the stone pillar hard. It is said that her uterus was injured, and she can no longer have children. During her hospitalization, Jonathan's mother not only ignored her, but also scolded her for not being hit to death. A hooligan following Ellie slapped Jonathan's mother and knocked out 2 teeth. In a rage, Jonathan's mother finally had a stroke and became paralyzed like in her previous life. Evildoers will be punished by their own evil. Ellie and Jonathan's mother will torture each other in the future. I believe their days will be wonderful. Later, I heard from the teacher that before Jonathan disappeared, he stole the work notes of the laboratory. I remembered this time in my previous life. We discovered a gold mine during a geological survey. He risked his life to steal the coordinates from the notebook and sold the information to an illegal mining boss from another place to make a profit. What awaits him is only a cold prison. It can be seen that God's mercy is limited. Not everyone who is reborn can get what they want. But it is certain that everyone is his own protagonist. It belongs to me, of course, and I write it myself.